Welcome to this demo of single dashboard across the partners. We will also discuss about what you can do with the single dashboard and each of the platforms which have been listed on the dashboard. Now, if you look at the dashboard, whatever products you have registered for would come in products activated, and whatever products which are available for you to use would come in products available. The products which are activated would have a button which is called as access, and those products which you want to access, you can see here, and you can click on any of those products. We would also discuss about each of these products in detail and what kind of services you can enable on these products, and a demo of each of those services being enabled on the products. Now, let's say, for example, if you have a career counseling product and if you really want the recruitment platform as well, I will just click a button on the single dashboard, and you can see that this recruitment platform is now enabled for you, and you can access the recruitment platform on the same ID which you have. There's a button of main menu. If you click on that button, you will go back to the single dashboard. Now, on this single dashboard, we will access the other products like the skill and competency assessment platform. If you click here, the platform is now enabled for you. You can go back to the main menu. We'll give you a view of what is that you can do with each of these platforms. So let us start with the skill and competency assessment platform. Now, as part of this platform, there are multiple services you can enable. For example, you can define something called as innovation report. You can define job related entrance exams. You can define job fitment reports. You can define employee learning reports, or you can define life coaching discovery reports or corporate readiness reports. Now, how do you do this? When you access this platform, you would see quick links here, which is manage roles and manage candidates, etc. And similar view you will get on the left-hand side, where you can start looking at the various learning management roles you can set, or you can start managing candidates or students, for example. So let us define a simple corporate readiness report for you and see how your students can take such a report. The first thing you need to do is you need to go to manage roles. And if you click on that, you first have to define a new role. Now, I would say, as part of the corporate readiness, I would first try to evaluate this candidate in terms of a marketing role. And also give an institution name. Suppose it is your own private institution, then you can call it you can give any institution name which you have, and you can give the role title here. The experience you can give for the role, whatever, based on the kind of evaluation you want to do. So here, let's say if you're evaluating anywhere between 3 to 7 years, and you can give any role description. By default, the level selected will be professional, and you can give whatever state you are trying to assess this particular role for. Now, what you would see is, on this particular marketing role, you would be given a list of all the competencies which you can select. Now, these competencies are around 35 functional competencies and around 40 odd technical competencies, which you can see here, of different languages like C, C++, Java, Angular, etc. And others which are related to employment, entrepreneurship, innovation related competencies are also seen here. what I would do is I would understand that for a marketing role, there are some aspects which are required, which are like marketing fundamentals. How good is my digital marketing? How good is my creative and design? How good is my written communication? Or let's say, how good is my storytelling and improvisation? So I would select a list of those competencies which would define this particular role very clearly. So let's pick up a few more. At max, you can define around 9 competencies. And then you can just create this particular role. So now this is for a corporate readiness kind of a test for marketing you're trying to select. If you're trying to create another test, which is, let's say, related to innovation or entrepreneurship, for example, you can always create a new test or a role. Innovation and entrepreneurship, readiness. And then you can give any institution name here. And define the level at which you want to. So if it is somebody like a graduate who does not have any experience, you can always select 0 to 2 years and give some role description here. You want to evaluate this person in terms of how good they are in terms of their innovation or entrepreneurship kind of a quotient. Select the state. And then after you select the state, you can select the competencies which are very, very particular to innovation or entrepreneurship. Now, if you look at innovation or entrepreneurship, certain competencies are very much required. For an entrepreneur, the person has to handle pressure. The person has to have a lot of passion, has to have a problem solving ability, has to have self-inspiration, has to have interpersonal skills to manage a team, should be very inventive to look at newer dimensions of innovations, should have adaptation qualities or qualities related to curiosity or technology acumen, for example, or should be good enough to learn, for example. So those are the competencies we have defined for evaluation for an entrepreneurship kind of a report. And you can create this report, for example. There are only 9 competencies, so I'll have to remove one of the competencies. So I'll remove handling pressure, for example, just for the purpose. I can create the competency. Now what happens is you have already created one test, which is like a test related to marketing role, and then one test which is related to innovation report, for example. So this is one of the variations you have created. So then what you can do is you can go back to the dashboard, and once you have defined the role, now you add the candidate for which this test has to be taken. This particular test has to be taken. If I add a candidate, you can always prefetch a candidate which you have already given before, or you can create a new candidate. So you can give any dummy candidate number, whatever you want to give, and give any email address of that particular candidate. We have given candidate@bodhami.com, just a demo candidate. We'll give first name, last name, and then we'll give a postal code, and then we'll give a phone number and a password. And now this candidate can be assigned to this particular role. Now, if you really want to give an innovation test or an entrepreneurship test, you can do that. Or if you want to give a corporate readiness test for marketing role, you can do that. So I'll define this role for this particular candidate. You have an option of allowing the candidate to download a report. By default, I don't want that to happen, so I will not allow it. And you can also look at proctoring. So what is proctoring means? The candidate will not be able to copy while answering this test, which means that the camera will be on at any point in time, and the camera will do recordings of dynamic images of this test and make sure that the candidate is aware that the recording of the test is happening, and the candidate would not be allowed to quit the full screen or look at any other tabs, for example. So this is proctoring, which means that proctor tests are such that there is a security, and copying cannot be possible using proctor test. Now, if you want that, you can enable it. If you don't want that, you can just say no. So by default, you can give it as no. If you want to attach the candidate's profile, you can always attach a resume, but it is not required. And you can just create. The moment you create, this particular test is sent to the candidate. Now the candidate would get an email on the email address which you have given here, saying that this test is now enabled for you and this for this particular report. Now, what we can also do is do a bulk upload, which means that on a bulk upload, you can always do a bulk upload of all the candidates. So for that, you have to download this CSV file. And then once you open this CSV file, you can then fill all the details of all the candidates you want to give this test. For example, it can be students, it can be graduates, it can be professionals for this particular kind of a test. So you can fill the first name, last name, email address, phone number, PIN code, password, employee number, etc. These are mandatory and these have to be unique. So once you fill that, you can then just upload it for that particular role for which you want to assign this particular candidates. So once you do that, all these candidates will get uploaded after you click the upload button, and then the test will be assigned to all of them. You can then go back to the dashboard and check that this particular candidate is assigned, and one license is deducted when the candidate has been assigned. And in manage candidate, you can see that candidate. Now this test for this particular candidate is open. So what we can do is first answer the test as if we are this particular candidate and see how that works. So for that, I will just sign out and I will log in as this candidate. 4567890 is the password. So I log in as a candidate. The moment I log in as a candidate, then I will get a new update password where you are asked to forcibly update as a candidate, because this is the first time you will set your own password. So I'll set a new password for this candidate and I will update the password. When I log in as a candidate, you can see that this innovation and entrepreneurship readiness test is already assigned now. And then you can start taking the test. So when you take the test, this test can be taken in any of these languages. By default, let's select English. This test has two components. One is the aptitude test, which has around 70 questions for 75 minutes. And then there is section 2, which is functional test, which is where all your competencies you have defined as part of this particular report, which you have selected, would be tested. So there will be two parts to this particular report. The general aptitude test, which is testing all your 14 odd aptitude or skill, or and also evaluating your personality. And the functional test, which is looking at how good your readiness is to this particular competencies, so that you can pick up this particular role, for example. Now, everywhere you can see that there is this learning test which is coming. All this is customizable. So if you write to us that for this particular platform, can you please change the name of the test to something else, like innovation test or entrepreneurship test or corporate readiness test, we will change it for you at our end as part of our customization, free of cost. So when we do that, we can now see that the name actually will change to that particular name of the test. Now we will start this test. This test now, section 1 is started. I will just go and randomly answer section 1 and show you the flow of how this test goes. So the section 1 is all general aptitude. And after every 10 questions, the results will get saved, and you'll get markers of how the test is getting answered and questions are getting populated. If there are any images like this, the student can always click on those images and look at the full screen of those images. So we will just go ahead and randomly answer this test and complete this particular test. After 70 questions are answered, it will ask you if you really want to submit the test. Then we will go ahead and submit. The name of the test, again, as I said, it can be changed. The second part is functional test, which is made up of 9 competencies in this case, which we had selected. So there will be 6 questions per competency, which will be selected. The test will be started once we start the test. And as part of the second part, for the selected competencies, automated questionnaires will be chosen from the database based on the level. And then the questions will be shown to the candidate. Now, the candidate can answer each of these questions and then submit the final test. What we will do after the submission is log in as a counselor and see how the test result looks like. I'm just randomly answering the test right now. And I'm submitting the test. And it says that your test has now been sent to your respected learning manager. You can go back to the dashboard and you can see that the test has been answered. The test is completed and you can log out. Now we will log in as the respective counselor and then see how this test results look like. You can go on the skill and competency assessment platform. And then once you look at that particular candidate, the candidate submission would have increased by 1. And you can, under manage candidate, see that the test status is submitted. And you can click on the actions button and then view the report. Now here the name of the report by default is candidate learning report, but remember that this test was particularly for entrepreneurship and innovation. So if you want to change the name of the report from candidate learning report to entrepreneurship report, we can change it at our end as well. And we can show you how this is done. So in this particular report, what you'll notice is this is a summary report and it contains summary of the aptitude scores of this particular individual and also the summary of the functional score. Again, what we do is we have completely customized this particular report. So if you want to change the name of the quotient, let's say to innovation quotient, or let's say corporate readiness index, or whatever you want to name it as, we can change this particular score to any name. So in that case, each of these also would change. Similarly, improvement areas for that particular dimension also would change. Now, this gives a view of all the functional and the aptitude strengths and weaknesses and the respective scores which this candidate has got across that particular competency. And if you want to change the name of the candidate, like if you want to call this as, instead of candidate, you want to call it as student, you can also customize that at our end. Like here, it will come as benefits to students, for example, instead of candidates. So you can always write to us in terms of the customization, standard customization which we offer, and we can get that done for you as part of our setup for this test. Now, if you go through this report clearly calls out your area-wise performance and areas you're good at and areas you're not, you need improvement, and tries to define your skill definition across the median and skills you are good at compared to others and skills you are not good at, where you need improvement. Similarly, it also covers your detail skill areas. And after that, it will also cover your functional score. Functional score is nothing but your competency score. If you want to name this to something else, like your innovation score, for example, or your corporate competency score or readiness score, we can always do that. And for each of these competencies, you get a competency chart, which is your functional score chart, and how you have done across each of these competencies which are required for innovation or entrepreneurship, for example. And then you can look at areas which you are good at versus areas of improvement to improve your overall competency for that particular area. And you get plots of how you have scored across each of these areas in terms of percentage as well, and your comparison with others for that particular area, and what that dimension really means for you. Now, one of the things which can happen is you might also, this is a detailed persona report as well, which is part of this. So you might also want to define your own competencies. So in this case, what we also do is, as part of the learning management, you can always define your own competency which you want and only you can see. Suppose I want to test something like sports quotient. And this is something which is very unique to you, which you want to test for your, or you can say like life skills quotients, life skills competency. Then you can describe what this is. This is an understanding of how good the student is in his or her life skills. Just a general example. And then you will need at least 6 questions to make this particular competency live. So I will just go ahead and either do a bulk upload of all the questions or do an upload of one question at a time. So you can always define this competencies. So I can enter a question for measuring this unique competency you have. And I will give demo options. It is just for you to see how you can define your own competencies. And you can select what is the right answer with the right difficulty level. And this is a demo solution. You can also attach an image if you want, and you can also attach an I don't know answer. You can create it. So like that, you have 6 questions. So what will happen is, after all the 6 questions are added, when you then go and start defining, go back to the dashboard and start defining a new role and create a new role, it will start showing up here, life skills competency. But because you have not added 6 questions, it is not made live. At least minimum 6 questions is what we need to evaluate the competency. So that's a rule we have set. But once the 6 questions are live, you can start evaluating on this competency. So what does it mean is, you can define anything as a competency. So today, suppose you want to measure skills related to corporate readiness. So you can look at different new roles and all, and for that role, whatever questions you want to add, you can add those as competencies. Tomorrow, if you want to add something like physics, chemistry, biology test, for example, and only look at your science quotient, for example, you can also add that as a competency. So you can start defining competencies and the questions related to competencies and make this entire thing generic and fit to your advantage in terms of how you want to define or what you want to define as part of the report. And then use those competencies according to the use case. Now we will just take an example of this particular report and also see how this report can be changed in terms of naming of the report. So if you give us a request, what we can do is we can start changing the report at our end, and we'll give you an example of how this new report will look like. So now we have, as part of admin, have done customization at our end for this particular report, and we will see how this report will look like. I would log in again on the platform. And go back to the report and go to manage candidate and see the report again. Now, if I view this report, this report will come as entrepreneurship report. The same report which was named differently earlier is now named completely different. Instead of calling it as candidate, we can change it to any stakeholder. So I have named the stakeholder as student here. So the report is also now changed, instead of candidate, to a student. Instead of calling it as functional quotient, I have called it as innovation quotient because that's how I wanted, because this is an entrepreneurship or innovation report. So we can change the name of the report or dimension. And you can send us a request and we will get it done for you. And you would notice that the name of the report also is changed from candidate report to entrepreneurship report, for example. So everywhere the changes automatically would happen based part of this configuration. And when you go down, you would also see that the same report, where it was earlier having a section which is called as functional quotient, has now got changed to innovation quotient, because that's the kind of a setup we have done at our end. So whatever you name it and want to name the report, we can get that name done. Whatever you want to call the student, we can change that. Whatever you want to change it as a sender, we can do that. So there are some default customizations we have, and we can get it done for you. So we'll now go back. So like that, if you, for any kind of services you want to enable, for those services, you just have to go to the dashboard and define this different kind of roles, which we have also shown you. For each of the service, define that role basically for that particular service, whether it is an innovation test or corporate readiness test or a job fulfillment test or whatever, and select the right competencies for that particular test, or define your own competency. And then you can always tell us to change the name of the test or name of the report, and we can get it done for you from our end. You can now go to the main screen. And the other platform, like recruitment platform, is also similar, where you can first define a job and create a new job. And as part of that, you can create a new job code. So suppose you are evaluating, you want to hire or you want to provide recruitment services for IT in terms of front-end developer, or you want to evaluate somebody how good he or she is in terms of front-end development. You can give institute name, title of the job, experience level, and you can always give a description. And here the number of positions by default is 1. In case if you are a company or a recruiter, you'll have more number of positions. But if you want it for your own self or your own student, you can always give it 1. You can then give the state, whatever you want. And then this is very important because this defines the cutoff percentage. So if you want to hire somebody, or if you want to set a benchmark saying that, I would test all the candidates and I want selection criteria to be 70%, for example, or a 60% or a 50%. All those people who are less than 50% would get pre-screened and would not qualify. So the best part about this recruitment platform is you can start setting up cutoff criteria, and you can also use it for your own individual or a student purpose and try to see if the student or a graduate is actually fulfilling that criteria. If not, then the graduate or a student who is actually preparing would have to then start preparing more and skilling themselves so that they can start meeting that criteria. So we can actually set up cutoff percentages here. So let's assume that you're setting up a cutoff percentage, and then whatever competency which are defined here, let's say this is a technical competency, you can always select, okay, I want to check how good this person is in computer engineering or data science or business analysis, or certain programming languages like mobile programming, or let's say Java programming. And I can always create this competency and continue. So like that, you can also create your own IT or technical assessments, or functional assessments. So this is like a role I've created. But let's say if I wanted to create something like a technical assessment, then I could have also created that. So you can always define that as a job or a role, and give your own institute name and give the experience level you want to evaluate for, and give description, number of positions. So this is an IT technical assessment, and I will give a cutoff percentage for that. I'll just rename it as IT technical assessment. And then I will select whatever competencies which are really relevant to IT. Suppose you are trying to look at a engineering candidate, you can always look at engineering design, engineering mathematics, engineering electrical engineering, for example, quality assurance. And you can define certain skills, for example, how good this person is in Angular or C, C++, which are basic competencies which are there as part of technical competencies. And you can create this technical evaluation. So it is very important to know which competencies are applicable for what kind of reports, and what is that you really want to test of that particular candidate or a professional. And that all depends on where this candidate wants to go. So if it is a job, then you have to look at job competencies and start looking at what are such competencies and coming back and defining it here. Or if it is any preparation for interview, you can look at those competencies and get those back and start defining it here, and then calling out that reports as with different names. So here it is, one is IT technical assessment report, or a front-end development kind of a role evaluation we are doing. So after this is done, then you can go back to the dashboard and start managing your same candidates. So now I'll create a candidate. Now let's assume that the same person we had given last time, I want to just add the same person here. So it was candidate@bodhami.com, and I will fetch this candidate, and all the details start populating. And I will just fetch the same candidate, and I will add this person to, let's say, a IT technical assessment, which I want to do. And I will just create. So immediately a test will be sent out. And if you then log out as this particular user and log in as a candidate, let me just log in. Now, once you log in, we can see that there are now 2 courses which are assigned. So earlier we had set a test which is called as entrepreneurship test. You can always see that this test is what is shown here. So instead of a career test, you can change the name of the test to recruitment test or entrepreneurship test or whatever you want. We can get that name changed for you. You can always write back to us. Then you can see that there is one more test which is assigned, which is IT technical assessment test, and the candidates will start taking the test. Again, it is similar. There are 2 kinds of tests. One is part 1, which is general aptitude, and one is part 2, which is the functional test. Again, this recruitment test can be proctored as well. And as part of proctoring, if you want to see the images of the person answering the test, so the camera will be kept on all the time and the test will be answered. Now, just for demo purpose, I will just take you through this test. So after you answer all these questions, which are totally 17 number, which assesses your skills or aptitude and personality, you would then have to submit this particular section, and it will then go to the next part of the test, which is your functional test. Now, in this case, we had given around 6 competencies. So we'll submit this test. So you can start this. This is section 2 now, and you can start that section. Again, you want to change the name of the report. We can also get that changed, as I mentioned. These are the default names which are coming. So you can see that there are around 48 questions. So there are 8 competencies we had selected. So based on the number of competencies, the questions also will change. You can always click on this particular image and you can see the details of what the question has been asked. So these are, you can see coding level questions which are asked to that particular individual, because we have selected those particular competencies and IT level assessment or technical assessment. But based on the kind of assessment, the questions also will change. You can see here. I'll just continue and submit the test. So after finishing the test, you'll get an option to submit. And once you submit, it'll say that your test has been submitted. The names of the test all can be changed. You just have to mail us saying that you want to change this to a new name, and we can get that change done as part of our customization. You can go back to the dashboard, and you can see that 2 tests have been answered by this particular individual, and this test has been submitted, which is for technical assessment for this institute. And I will just log out as this particular customer, and I will log in as the demo counselor. And you can then go to the recruitment platform, and you can see that this candidate has now submitted, and then view the report. And this report is almost similar, but in terms of this report, the name of the report also can be changed. But in terms of this candidate fitment report, we will show you the aptitude and functional competencies. Again, these can be changed. And you can also see that now the system has realized, using artificial intelligence, that this particular candidate is good at these kind of careers. So we also show a plot of what are the ideal careers purely based on skill, not based on interest, but purely based on skill and personality. What are the good options for this particular individual in terms of careers, so that the recruiter can also take a call, or the counselor or a mentor can also take a call in terms of this particular person's fitment, just purely based on skills and personality and not based on interest. And the other sections are also similar, which you would have seen. There's 360 degrees report. This is skill assessment. And after all the sections of skill assessment is done, we will also have the functional assessment, which is the candidate functional assessment for all the competencies which are selected, and then the personality. So you can then go to hiring dashboard if you want to see for all those jobs what are the various candidates who have applied and how many people have answered and how many people have matched. You can always see that. Now let's say for this particular job or a role, if I click here, you will see that this particular person's score is just 33% in aptitude and 22% in functional. So this person is not selected. And if I start changing the cutoff percentages to a little lower, you can start seeing how different kind of candidates would now start showing in matched versus unmatched. So you start using this filtering criteria to apply this job cutoff or recalculate job cutoffs basically, and seeing which kind of candidates match versus unmatched. And you can also look at benchmarking of the candidates in terms of which candidates are better than others and so on. Now we'll go back to the main menu. The counseling platform is what you've already seen and accessed as part of your certification programs. And then you can also look at learning management, where you can start hosting your own live certification courses. So when you register for a learning management system, it'll ask you what's your gender, and it'll ask you profile headline. This is just for you to create your own page. So I'll give an example like teacher with 5 years of experience. And then I'll give a profile summary. This is just testing for the current purpose. I'll give an address. And I will indicate the state, whatever is the state. And I'll give any photographs for the purpose of the demo. So let me give Bodhami photograph. And then I will save and continue. Then it'll ask you what kind of profession you want to teach, whether you want to teach anything related to, say, management or entrepreneurship, or only just purely career counseling, or teaching, for example, science or arts or commerce, for example. So based on, or let's say, school and competitions, for example, physics, chemistry, maths, and so on, or NEET, CBSE, for example. So whatever it is, it will tell you, what kind of subjects would be covered here. But what you can then do is you can always give languages, and what kind of different languages. You can add more than one languages by just giving it here as part of your profile. And then education and experience is something is optional, but you can always fill it for the purpose of your own page, which will be created. And you can continue. And then it'll ask you what are the sub specializations, so like, do you teach, because you've selected um, education and science for schools. It'll give you options of whether you want to teach physics or created courses, or biology related courses, and so on, according to the specialization. And it'll ask you what classes you want to take and what boards you want to take it for. So you can give different boards like CBSE or ICSE or state boards. And if it is state board, it'll ask you which state board you want to teach. And you can give your PAN number, which is mandatory. And then if you go to the next page, you can always give your availability. In case if you want to teach live classes, we always ask you availability if you want to enable it later. But you can always say that, okay, these are the time slots I'm available, and I'm available both on weekdays and weekends, for example. And then if you want to create your course, you can then look at those tips of creating your course and how lengthy the course should be, and you can save. So we give you options to create 3 kinds of courses. One is a video course where you have to have pre-recorded videos. You can use Zoom or any other device to look at the report. And then we can also look at assessment or test only. Suppose you want to create your own physics entrance test series or chemistry entrance or NEET entrance test series, you can click using that. Or if you want to teach on a live platform, you can, or using this particular course you want to teach live, you can create a live course. So let's assume we are just creating a video course here. I'll give the title of the video. And then some description here. If you don't want to indicate the course fee, you can just give it 0. And then because it is related to physics, you can just click on physics or whatever specializations you have chosen, and for whatever class you want to conduct it, for example. And then you will just continue, and then you will actually start uploading the actual content. So you just look at how to upload your own content. These are tips which are given when you access the platform, how to create your own sections and lectures. So I would then add lectures. So in this case, you can see that there are 2 lectures I've added here just for the purpose of this demo. So just call it like chapter 1. And chapter 1 is made of gravitation and motion, for example, whatever you want to do. And you can then use this upload button to upload the video. So wherever is your video, you indicate that video. You will need videos to have the recording done. So the video is uploaded here. And then you can just submit the application. So once you've submitted the application, your page is also complete. So this will be your own page. And then you can go back to the dashboard, which is your learning management system. And you can see that you have 1 total active courses. So once you have added the courses, your courses can be seen here. All your courses can be seen here in my courses. And if you want to assign students, then you can first create a class. Let's say I want to have all 8 standard students. So I'll first create a class. And then once I create a class, I will then create a student by clicking on manage student. So I can add student. For the purpose of this demo, I can use the same candidate. The same student who has answered all the other tests for us. And then I will add it to this particular class and create. So the new student has been created under this particular class. And now I will assign this course so that the student will get the course. So when I assign, I will just click on this class and what course to assign. So there was a course I created, physics. I want to just assign this to this particular class, and I want to give some tentative completion date and then schedule. It will just make sure that you have enough licenses. So every student will require a license when the course is added. So when the course is added, the student would need a video license. So in case if you want to buy license, now the course is assigned, but if the student will not be able to access the course and it will show an error message. In case you want to buy license, you can go here and buy the video license. Now let's access it as a student and check how it goes. So this is a student now in this case. The student now has 3 courses, which includes the physics video class as well. The student can access it. When I click on it, all the course will come, but because there is no license which is enabled, this course is not coming. So the student can only access the course when there is a license on the course. So you can just go ahead and ask the go through the licenses and add a video license for the student to access this course. We'll log in again and check the learning management platform. So now this learning management platform has got enabled. So at any point in time, you can start creating certification courses or a video courses or live courses or test series, for example, or assessments or assignments or entrance exams, for example, as part of this, and then enable this platform. So this was a quick demo. If you have any questions, you can write to us at customer.support@bodhami.com. We'll be more than happy to help and support you as part of this process. Thank you so much.